Good day, everyone. In Philippines, I am Johannah from the Nanyang Technological University National Institute of Education. Thank you for inviting me to the Philippines World Home Economics Day celebration. The title of my presentation today is Food Waste Literacy in Singapore. I'll be sharing the food waste situation in Singapore and some research data on food waste conducted in my university, and conclude with some programs that promote food waste in Singapore. In Singapore, we import 90% of our food and 40% of our water because the country produces very little water. As you can see, 30% of the vegetables, 9% of the fish, and 24% of the eggs are grown or produced in Singapore for the people. Since food are imported and with other factors like recent COVID-19 pandemic and the war, food price has increased very sharply. Food in Singapore is expensive, I must say, and local produce being so little, we must not waste food in any way. And in this slide, it shows us that another important reason why we shouldn't waste food. Most of the food get buried or incinerated. Those food that are wasted, they get buried or incinerated. Recycling rate is only at 19%. Comparing to metal, almost 99% of the waste, metal waste can be recycled, but not for food. What is the current food trend in Singapore on food waste? During the COVID pandemic, there was actually less waste generated. Since during the COVID shutdown, restaurants are closed and dining in restaurants are restricted. Perhaps that could cause less wastage at the restaurant level. However, while less waste was created in general, more waste was disposed by the household sector as people work from home. There is also an increase in household waste recycling, which is a better sign. Now let's look at a little small research that my student did on university students' waste literacy, perception, and food waste practices. We asked the students a bunch of questions on food waste, their knowledge, but about 30%, got it right. Maybe some of the questions are too specific, and so it's a little bit hard for them to get the answer. But still, the percentages of students getting the questions right is considerably very low. So we can kind of conclude that they have very little knowledge of food waste. And we also asked them, who do you think is responsible for minimizing food waste? Sadly, half of them said that it's personal responsibility. And 30% said that it is the role of everyone to play, collective effort to play. But still, that means that still there's about 20% of them who thinks that it's other people's responsibilities and not their job. And that's not a very good sign. We asked them why they finish their food, when they go to the canteen, why do they finish their food? They stated that it is because the food quality is good. Conversely, if the quality is bad, some chose to throw them away. And also there is when there's too much food and they cannot finish, they throw it away. They do not think about bringing it home. Here are some photographs, of a before and after meal that my student took. I'll just click a few slides and see if you can pick up some of the trends from these photographs. Right. So in summary, right, you can see that food that are not edible, such as bones, skins, the core of the apples, for example, they are being thrown away. Dry food, on the other hand, has very little waste, right? Let's take a look backwards at the photograph. You see, these are dried food, burgers and fries, they are dry food. This is what we call the dry noodles. In Singapore, we can always find dry noodles and serve either in the soup form or the dry form. And this is the dry form, and almost everything is eaten up, right? Bones, unfortunately, they cannot, eat the bones, so they throw it away. But again, this is another example of the dry food, the Japanese don, the chirashi don, and everything is eaten up. So we can see that food that is dry, they have very little waste. Food that's soup, food with soup, for example, the tom yum vermicelli soup, right? The kimchi soup, right? The soup, the ingredients, what we call the main, the inside, the food that's inside, the ingredients are eaten up. The meat, the tofu, they are eaten up, but the liquid, the water, the soup stock is left behind. So there's also a wastage on condiments, like the ketchup, the dips, the soy sauce that you eat at the side of the dish with the dish. And also, of course, when you have food waste, there's also packaging waste. Okay. So then we ask them, why do you throw the food away? How are they handled after, the leftover, and why do they do it? Here in this slide, you can see that throwing away is a common response, right? Throwing away is a common response. Some see it as the right thing to do. They are, and interestingly, in the second response, the students said that they didn't know it was served. For example, the one in the second one that I highlighted, they are not aware that the pickled ginger was served with the rice. And so she didn't like the ginger, and so she threw it away. Okay. And here, another participant said she has no regret of throwing it away, because it's not really enough for packing. So if there's enough for them to doggy bag, or take away, the leftover, they will do it. But it's so little, maybe a mouth of rice or a piece of meat or a piece of tofu or a stalk of vegetable. It's too little for them to pack, they believe. And so they believe that throwing away is the right thing to do. Okay. Then remember in the earlier slides, I mentioned that, when it's too little to throw away, here this one shows that, they find that it's normal. It's normal that, if I cannot finish, it's acceptable to throw away. And if it's just a little bit of waste, it's okay to throw away. And they say that why they throw away the cheese is because it was stuck to the container. So if it's stuck to the container, they cannot reach it, they have to throw it away, right? That's their reason. Here the students indicated that the gravy is unhealthy. So they say, no, the gravy is unhealthy to begin with. So that's why they throw it away. Since there's no more rice to eat with the gravy, so they threw away the gravy. So it's interesting for this point, I feel that, they're saying that if the oil is mixed inside the food, it's considered edible. But if the oil is like kind of separated out from the food, it becomes inedible. An interesting observation. Okay. So in summary, here's the reason for throwing away food, right? Something for the seller and for us consumers to think about. How can we introduce programs or take actions to address these reasons? Right? Maybe something very simple ways, some very simple ways we can introduce, such as clearly informing the consumers what is in the dish, or make a list of what is being served in the dish, right? So that if they didn't like it, they can ask not to have it and not thrown away, make the dish nice to eat, right? That's a very logical answer. Ensuring that the food can be reached, like the cheese that is stuck to the box. So we must prevent the cheese from being stuck, or any food that's being stuck. Sometimes we have little what's that called, leftover garlic, onions that's in the container, and maybe they're chopsticks. They use chopsticks and they couldn't pick up the small bits, and that is also a reason why they throw away. So, like my personal example, right? I have a rice cooker that is not non-stick. So every time when I cook rice, there will be some rice left at the bottom, of the pot, and I couldn't scrape it out. And that is always a food waste until I buy a non-stick rice cooker. That's where every grain of rice can be, picked up to be eaten. So I reduce the food waste in this sense. So the equipment, using the right equipment is also very important. Okay. Another study done by Grandi and Apaya Singh suggested that the government should make more effort to raise awareness, especially targeting children and young adults. I mean, children are at the formative years, so they are easily molded, and they can be, they will take advice in, and hopefully as they grow older, the advice will become a behavior, all right, the right behavior. So restaurants should also provide statistics or data to provide the information so that, you know, we can have initiatives, or we can have programs that is effective, right? That will stop food waste. Another example will be this double soot. And you can see this in Singapore. We live in high-rise flat. Some of you who have come to Singapore, you know, most of us live in apartments and high-rise flats. So when we throw our rubbish, you know, where do we throw our rubbish? We don't bring it down to the bottom of the flat. Usually, what we do is we throw it into the soot. The soot can be in a house, inside your apartment, or outside the common corridor. So they propose that there's two types of soot. You know, one is the recyclable, and one is the general waste, right? So this is also another option. However, some people are very careless, or they cannot be bothered. They might just throw something that is food, you know, or waste into the recyclables, and contaminate a lot of recyclables material. Okay, let me show you a video on what some programs can be done.
Food waste is one of the major sources of waste in Singapore. It accounts for about 12% of all the waste we generate. But tackling food waste cannot just depend on camera tricks. It requires real solutions. Now, DBS and NEA want your creative ideas to tackle food waste.
Okay, this is another initiative. This one is a program collaborated by our local banks and our national environmental agency to promote food waste. So we need more corporate involvement, you know, rewards, competitions to encourage people to reduce food waste. Okay. The Singapore National Environmental Agency, NEA, has actually come up with more structured and holistic plans to reduce food waste since 2015. The first line of defense, or most importantly, is to reduce the food source, reduce the source of food waste, right? Then, when the food is unsold, the food can be distributed, redistributed to others who wants to eat it, especially before expiry. Then the food that really cannot be recycled cannot be eaten or redistributed. They have to be recycled or treated properly. Finally, hopefully, some energy can be recovered from the food waste. Here are some examples, like the Love Your Food Handy Guide, right? This handy guide teaches consumer how to reduce food waste at different stages. Purchase, to preparation, to consumption at different locations. You know, like we have here, love your cooking, love your grocery, love your makan session. Makan is a Malay word for eating, you know. Singaporeans love to eat, so love your makan session. So what do you do after all these events? How do you handle all the food waste? Can you not throw it away? Can you not make the food become a waste, but, you know, recycle, redistribute or reshelve into another type of food? Okay, at the retailers level, at the manufacturer levels, okay, we also have guidelines on guidebooks on how they can reduce food waste. Just now I mentioned, you know, the third level is to redistribute the food. The second level is to redistribute the food. So working with private NGOs or organizations or associations to redistribute food that's edible. For example, Food Bank is an organization in Singapore. So you can actually donate your food into these bins, and they will collect and redistribute. In my own capacity, I'm also involved in my university Green Clan group. Okay, we set up this ground up initiative to promote sustainable practices on campus, to promote them, to promote environmentalism, to reduce waste, you know, remind people of how to reduce waste, etc. This is one of the programs that we plan almost every year. So at Lunar New Year, all right, many families will, you know, cannot finish their snacks. the goodies that they bought for Chinese New Year. Most of the time we over purchase. So all the uneaten cookies and snacks, what do? We have a donation drive, and we collect them for our migrant workers who are actually our ground workers, and they already they are in Singapore from overseas, very lonely, and they usually can't spend their holidays with families. So we give them unopened cookies to cheer them up a little bit. Okay, like in food center, I mean, if you come to Singapore, our hawker culture is a UNESCO preserved heritage program, and our hawkers, there's many places with hawker centers. So what happens with all the food that's uneaten? All right, I mean, and I say food uneaten, if it's a hawker center, it might not be easy to be redistributed unless the consumers pack it home. So one of the ways is they have this food waste digester. There's actually a few hawker centers that adopted that, and they will convert the food waste into organic fertilizer, in a very short period of time. Not the traditional composting that takes months. This is very fast, about 24 hours. They can convert the food waste into fertilizers. In the last 2 years, there's also this Recycle Right program. We tell the people, what can be recycled. Because a lot of people will just throw away the food into the recycling bin. And it is they found that about 40% of the clean waste, what we call the recyclable waste, cannot be recycled anymore because people throw food items into it, like leftover food or dirty containers, and contaminate the whole lot of the rubbish, the recyclable rubbish, which is not the right thing to do. So a scan of some literature also show that people don't like to project themselves as wasteful. I mean, if I ask you, are you wasteful? No, I'm not wasteful, because being wasteful is not exactly a very good trait, right? So people like to be wasteless. Being thrifty, is a very good a trait also, not waste money. So being kind to the environment is also a good trait, right? However, when most people are not aware that food wastage levels are alarming, because when we throw away little bits of food at one time, it did not prick them, that, oh, I'm wasting money, I'm wasting food, because the amount is very small. But all this small quantity can add up to be a mountain, right? A mountain of food. So consumers on a daily basis, they are unaware of the total amount of the food that are thrown away to feel responsible about it, right? So we need to highlight to them that little bit add up to a mountain, right? Like a more, so that's why we have to alert our consumers not to be wasteful. Then what can we do? As teachers, as home economists, right? We are role models, right? Also ski, Grandazon and colleague, they describe that we can also be sociable and educating teachers, right? So what does it mean by sociable teachers? We talk to our students, right? We can talk to them about all sorts of topics. So choose to talk to them about food waste and the meals that they're eating. Choose to tell them that, hey, what can we do? Why should we not do, right? And can potentially influence our children during their meal situation, that they will not take food that they don't like to eat, so that they won't throw away food. Or when they have too much food, what must they do so that they can still redistribute the food? And this can effectively reduce the food waste in school. Okay. So in conclusion, home economists has a job to do, right? We all have a job to do. We can teach more about food literacy. We can conduct research so that we have data, so that we are, Chinese say, 对症下药. That means we cure the problem, the health problem, with the correct medicine, so we can intervene more effectively. With this, I'd like to thank you and have a most blessed World Home Economics Day.